order. Welcome to meeting number 92 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Pursuant to the order of reference of Wednesday, November 1st, 2023, the committee will resume consideration of Bill S-205, an act to amend the Criminal Code and to make consequential amendments to another act. So at the meeting of December 4th, the committee adopted the following Clause 1 as amended by G1 and G2, Clause 4, Clause 5, Clause 9, and Clause 10. At the meeting of December 11th, the committee adopted amendments G3 and G4 pertaining to Clause 2. Today we are resuming debate on Amendment G5 pertaining to Order Clause 2. Clause 2 G5 already moved, and now we are resuming debate on Clause G5.
Ms. FEWO has her hand up.
It's already moved. Ms. FEWO?
Thanks so much, Sonia. And I just want to look at this clause. On this clause, what we see is it's changing most of these things down to 12 months rather than, in some cases, 3 years and 2 years. Could we just understand why there would be a reduction in time, specifically on the recognizance order? In the bill, it notes good behavior for a period of not more than 2 years. In the duration extended, there was a request for a period of not more than 3 years. And then when it comes to the defense for prison for a term not exceeding 2 years, all of these have been reduced down to 12 months. I'm just wondering if I can find out why we're reducing them to 12 months from 3 years.
Thank you. And Lisa?
Thank you, Chair. I also wanted to address this, and I was hoping maybe we could turn to the officials in the room to ask them. My understanding is it would bring this legislation into coherence with other pieces of legislation that we have, but perhaps we could turn to the officials for more explanation.
And the official can explain, please.
Thank you for the question. So the provisions of this bill currently allow the peace bond to be imposed for a duration of 2 years in any case where the court finds that there's a reasonable fear of domestic violence, or 3 years if the court makes this determination and the defendant has a prior conviction for domestic violence. All of the existing more specialized peace bonds in the criminal code, such as terrorism, organized crime, forced marriage, and serious personal injury offenses, as well as sexual offenses against a minor. All of the other peace bonds start at 12 months, and then each can be extended up to 2 years if there's a prior conviction for similar conduct, with the exception of terrorism. Terrorism starts at 12 months as well, but can be extended up to 5 years if you've have a prior conviction for terrorism. The policy surrounding the specific peace bond durations has been developed while being mindful of the seriousness of the specific conduct that's being targeted by the peace bond, while also being mindful of the purpose of the peace bond regime, which is really to prevent certain types of offending in a minimally impairing way, since no offense has yet been committed in the peace bond regime. So it's really distinct from the sentencing regime, where, the more serious the conduct, the longer your sentence would be. In the peace bond regime, since there hasn't been an offense committed yet, there's sort of this less restrictive approach that courts have taken to the peace bond regime. And basically the effect of these changes would simply bring the durations of this peace bond in line with all of the other peace bonds in the regime, in particular for peace bonds targeting equally, if not more serious conduct.
Lisa?
Just a follow-up question, just to clarify. So there is no other offense for which a peace bond starts at 2 years?
That's correct. They all start at 12 months. The 810 peace bond, which is the peace bond that typically people go to right now for domestic violence, starts at 12 months as well, and there's no means to have it extended. So this peace bond for domestic violence would be distinct from that process right now because you could still extend the peace bond, so that's what makes it a bit more unique, and also the fact that it has some more curated conditions for domestic violence.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and nice to see you in the chair. Welcome back, everybody. Happy New Year. I understand my colleague's point about that this has never been done before, but I think as legislatures, there's an opportunity here to change the status quo. And so what I mean by that is we have, in my community, for example, domestic violence is considered an emergency, right? And then we're seeing this across the country. So why wouldn't we want to create legislation that is proactive? Because we also know we have violent offenders out on the street. We know crime has increased 40%. We know public safety is a massive issue for this country and people don't feel safe. And to your point, to the official's point, and thank you for explaining everything, I appreciate it, you're saying less restrictive. And I think we are not in a position right now to be less restrictive. We have crises across this country of women and children who are unsafe. So why wouldn't we take this bill, which has been laid out by a senator whose own daughter was murdered as a result of domestic violence? So we know the intention is not a partisan intention. It comes from a place of genuine intent to protect those that he couldn't, right? To create legislation that should have been there for his daughter that wasn't. And I understand that, right now maybe we don't have peace bonds for people more than 12 months, but why? And if we are here as legislators to create a more safe community, if we are here to create more safety for women, and we know that it's an epidemic, a crisis across this country, why wouldn't we use this opportunity then to change the legislative and set the bar and say, you know what, we are the status of women, we actually care, let's try this. If it doesn't work, we'll come back and revisit it. But clearly what we have right now doesn't work because people aren't safe. So that would be my question to everybody in the room. I know we care, and why not set a different standard that says enough?
Anna?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome back, everyone. I guess my question is, and maybe you could help me understand this. The report that came out that said that Canada's violence is at the highest point since 2007. The homicide rate is the highest it has been in 30 years. So I guess what my point is, help me understand, as the Status of Women Committee, why we would lower that when we're trying to protect women. If our job here is to ensure the safety of every single woman and child, because let's be honest, the majority of these crimes happen to women, why are we considering giving criminals that benefit and not the victims?
Ms. Vecchio?
Thanks very much. I just want to carry on this 12 months. So I just want to ensure it indicates it's 12 months. So is that the maximum? I think I heard Ms. Moore talk about an extension of a peace bond. I don't note it in this legislation, but can you share with us how can a peace bond be extended in a situation like this, where they're showing up to 2 years, up to 3 years? Could we not have a minimum of 12 months and then extend it? I'm just wondering what those are, because I think for me that we'd want it kind of going to more of the protecting the victim for a longer period of time. So I was wondering if there's a way that it'd be 12 months with, in addition, just not a strict 12 months, and how peace bonds are actually, if I can find my words today, I'm so sorry, extended. Thank you.
Leah?
Thank you, Chair. And I do support this amendment, and this is my reasoning for it, and because I actually share concerns that I've brought up with some of my conservative colleagues about addressing violence, and we know carceral responses to violence don't work. In fact, they often result in like they don't solve it, which is why when we had witnesses come forward, they spoke about the need for therapeutic responses as a way to mitigate future violent behavior. And I'll just share that, if you just look at the recidivism rates, it is very clear that, doesn't matter how long you lock somebody up, recidivism rates are high because jails do not do the job of, helping those who exhibit violent behavior to change that behavior. You cannot develop pro-social behaviors in a totally anti-social violent environment. So I do support this amendment.
Before I go to the next speaker, can official reply the answer for a question for Ms. Vacchio's point?
Yes, I believe the question was about the extension of the peace bond. So the peace bond extension is not the most helpful word, but basically you can apply for a longer peace bond of up to this motion would change it so that it could be applied for a peace bond up to 2 years if there's a past conviction of intimate partner violence, because of the studies which show that if you have a past conviction of intimate partner violence, you could be more at risk of harming someone in the future. So that's why if you have a past conviction for this type of conduct, you could actually apply for a longer peace bond. But the starting point is 12 months, which could be renewed each year. So even though it's 12 months, what people typically do right now is come back to the court to have it renewed for another 12 months.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Alors,
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for those explanations from our witnesses from the Department of Justice. But we have a bill before us that is intellectual, but we need to come back to the heart level as well. So we want to have this serve as a deterrent. In Quebec, we have been through the very difficult experience of Senator Boisvenu. It's still talked about today, and the reason for that is that things are getting worse. They are not getting better. There has been an increase of 32% in the violence that we see in the streets, in Quebec, in our homes, between partners. So things aren't getting better. When Senator Boisvenu lost his daughter, I think Quebec as a whole shared that grief, and Canadians as well. So what I'm saying is things have not improved. And what we are doing, if we reduce the length of the peace bond, then we are actually reducing the severity, and we're not protecting the victims, which is the idea behind the bill. We want to protect women and children. And a colleague talked about recidivism and repeat offenses, so I think we have to be aware of that in this case. So what we see in the bill is a minimum, and I remember the two women who appeared before us who were here at the same day as Senator Boisvenu. They spoke to the committee and they begged us to adopt the bill as it stood. Thank you.
Okay, and Madame LaRouche.
I want to see this bill adopted on the one hand, because we do have to pass it. But I started my year by having to react to the murder of a woman in my region in Granby, and I committed before the media to making every effort to have us commit to seeing no more women murdered. So I am of two minds on this. I want to move ahead with the bill, but it is essential. I'm trying to decide on this. We're going to adopt this bill. I know that there are women's groups, and I have met with them recently. I met last week with a group last week in Chicoutimi, and they want us to see this as a continuum. They want society to take this seriously and to support women, to work together, have the whole system that works on this. We have groups in society who are working on it. We need this whole continuum of services. So I'm looking at what we can do exactly and what would be best. I'm trying to understand what our officials are telling us, whether this is sufficient, whether it needs to be more severe. And so I'm having a little trouble making up my mind. I'm listening carefully. But the main thing I want to see is to have this bill passed. And I understand that we have amendments that are being proposed, but the main thing we have to keep in mind is that this legislation is essential to help prevent the murder of women. There are too many women in Quebec, in Canada, who are suffering.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to begin by saying that I completely agree with Leah's rationale. I know that hurt people, and so if you don't offer therapy and allow these people to heal, then the violence won't stop. With that being said, I have a more of a technical question, and I'd like for a bit of an explanation. We are talking about lowering the maximum duration of the peace bond from 2 years to 12, but you've been speaking about it as it's written in for other peace bonds, that it's starting at 12 months. So for me, that's still, I don't know if you explained it, but I don't know why we're using the word maximum if it's starting at, if you could just clear that up.
Hi, thanks for the question. So each of the peace bonds that currently exist in the code can be ordered for a period not exceeding 12 months. Apologies, is the current wording that's in the code. But the more specialized peace bonds that I mentioned, such as organized crime, forced marriage, sexual offenses against a minor, and terrorism, have this additional provision which says that the peace bond can be ordered for up to 2 years if there's a prior conviction.
Lisa?
Thank you, Chair. I want to say I appreciate this debate and this discussion. I do think we need to set the standard as legislators, and I do think we have to do everything possible to keep women safe. But some of the language that I've heard today, I just want to clarify, and I think the officials pointed this out. We're talking about a peace bond, so this is before someone has necessarily been convicted of any crime. So we can't call them criminals. And I think it's an important part of the justice system. So I think this is a good debate and a good thing to talk about, but let's keep this in mind. Like, this is something that happens before the court process. So these aren't necessarily people who have been found guilty of anything. At the same time, it is something to keep women safe if they have accused someone of domestic violence. So I think it's a good discussion, but I'd just like us to all keep in mind the principles of our justice system and that we don't call people criminals if they haven't been convicted of any crime.
Michelle?
Sorry. Thanks, Chair. So my question to the officials, you were saying you can reapply at 12 months. My deep concern with that is the significant backlog in our justice system. So if you can't get in and there's a backlog and 12 months time lapses, you are in an extremely vulnerable position. So what is in this legislation or what is in the justice system as a safeguard to ensure that you don't lapse that time? Because if you're put in a queue, and we know, like, there's people that have cases that sit for years and years. So that would be a very big concern to me, just based on how backlogged our justice system is. So what is your response to that? Through the chair. Sorry.
Official, do you want to explain that? Or?
I appreciate the concerns, and certainly there are well-known delays throughout the criminal justice system across Canada. It really depends on the jurisdiction. I guess for peace bonds, there's nothing preventing someone from going in early to get ahead of the delay. Also, I think there was an amendment passed by one of the earlier motions that did allow for other people also to bring the peace bond on the intimate partner's behalf. So that could also assist if there's trouble with transportation or, getting to the court or remote areas, things like that.
So I guess my concern again is that all the work falls on the victim. That's what I'm hearing. So it's the victim's responsibility, again, to do this legwork because the system is broke, right? I think that's the other concern. So if you just changed the number, like what we had originally said, through you, Chair, I think you avoid this issue, and you actually would probably help declog the justice system, because most people are going to go back in, and you can go and remove a peace bond. That's going to be fine, right? So to me, it's not adding up. Again, that the onus is falling on the victim to do this work when they're dealing with a myriad of issues. When you have these conversations with victims, a lot of them are so stressed, they don't want to go in public, they're afraid, and now they have to make these appointments and be proactive, maybe 3 months into the peace bond, because how long is the delay? Again, it's not adding up for me to help the victim, this amendment.
Dominic, and then Karen and Leah.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would just like to add something about, first of all, I'd like to know, Madam Chair, how much time do we have for comments? Do we have a time limit? No? Okay, very well. Thank you. I just want to remind you that in Quebec, we had a woman murdered last week. I won't say any more about that, but a woman was murdered and she was pregnant. So I just would like us to keep that in mind. I have a question for our officials. We seem to be making a great effort to align ourselves with what already exists, the number of months and so on. So is this because we don't want to be stricter, more punitive against people that might be, for example, subject to an 810? If I understand correctly, that type of peace bond, which, of course, all of us are supposed to follow that principle of not disturbing public peace, so the person can continue to work, carry out their obligations, take part in recreational activities, and so on. So if the peace bond takes something away from the person subject to it, what does it take away? It gives something to the victim, that is more protection, to be in a safer environment. So can you speak to that, please?
Official, please.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup pour les commentaires.
Thank you very much for that comment. In fact, what courts are concerned about in reducing somebody's liberty with respect to the imposition of a peace bond, there are the conditions that have to be followed. There might be a condition, for example, where the defendant has to wear monitoring device. There are other conditions as well. For example, staying off social media or providing samples, not take drugs, all of those conditions. If someone breaks one of those conditions, the person may have to go to prison for 4 years. So they are very strictly applied conditions.
And while they're subject to the peace bond, which could have very significant consequences for them if they breach a condition of the peace bond. So in that sense, given that there hasn't been a criminal offense committed yet, the courts have said, yes, the government may legislate in the area of preventative justice. Usually we legislate in the area of punishing people for things that they did, but this is kind of a unique area where we're actually preventing a crime from occurring. But we need to make sure, the courts have said, that we're not being overly restrictive on the liberty, given that they haven't actually committed an offense yet. So there's sort of been, some of these principles have underlined how the conditions are imposed and the durations of the peace bond.
Karen?
Thanks so much. I just wanted to go back. You had talked, Ms. Moore, you talked about the peace bonds for things like criminal codes when it comes to sexual assault, terrorism, things like that, and the fact that there is additional clauses. Is there something in here that I'm not seeing where if somebody has had a past conviction that their bond would be greater than 12 months, or is it 12 months right from the start? I'm just kind of, you talked about those other clauses where they do have these extensions. Do we see something like that in this bill for past convictions?
Yes. So at proposed subsection 4 of 81003, so on page 2 of the bill, under clause 2, subsection 3 sets the maximum period for the peace bond currently at 2 years, and then subsection 4 would allow that period to go up to 3 years if there's a prior conviction for intimate partner violence.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back to this. So I'm looking at the recognizance. You're talking page 2, line 20. I'm looking at section 3, so looking at lines 21, 22, 23, 24, because the part here that we were changing was going to 12 months, not more than 2 years. So that's why I just want to verify that, because that was part of the change. I thought of this amendment was reducing it to 12 months and not for a period not more than 2 years.
So the current bill says 2 years, and this motion would amend lines 22 and 23 to specify that it's 12 months instead of 2 years for the recognizance order. But if you go down to line 30, it could, the motion would change it from 3 years to 2 years for what they call duration extended, but essentially is the situation where you have a longer peace bond because of a prior conviction.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to address a couple of things. One was, Michelle, you commented on like everything being left up to the victim. I actually think that's a really important piece, because I think it's important that people who have been, that are victims, their voices should center everything. So I think, taking away the voice of victims is not something we want. So I think it's actually, I understand the sentiment, but I think it's important that victims have that choice in terms of what they need to be to center their safety. So but I understand the sentiment behind it is to support victims, but I do think that's an important piece that we can't lose sight of. And I just want to go back to the senator. Like, it was very hard for me to listen to the senator's story. And, I think, all of us around the circle, we want to see something passed because he did it in honor of his daughter. That's not lost on me. My concern is that I don't think that around the committee table that we are in agreement with how it's going to look like. And I do have concerns that if we don't get the amendments in, that it's not going to pass in the House of Commons, and then he'll be left with nothing. And I have a deep concern about that. He deserves to have that bill passed, and that is up to us, that we can negotiate that we can negotiate a bill that works within the confines of the existing laws that are already in place. I do want to see this passed in the House of Commons. Even for the women that came forward, like to be a survivor of violence, to share your stories, that's very difficult to do. And so I understand the kind sentiments around the committee table for that as well. But we're running out of time. We're talking about violence in the committee. We are running out of time to do studies, including one that I put forward on a red dress alert, if we're talking about, in real time, coming up with strategies to deal with violence that will save lives. And so, I'm just speaking honestly. I think we work very well as a committee. But if it goes through without amendments, I don't think it's going to look like any of us want, and we'll all lose. And especially the person that's going to lose is going to be the senator. I have a really hard time with that. So I just want to share that, just being mindful of time to make amendments and get this through. I would be really sad for him if that happened. Thank you.
Anna, you are the next speaker.
So I'm going back to what Lisa said, that, they're not convicted yet, and I get that. But the reason I bring this up is a few years ago, I was volunteering, and a young lady came up to me and said that she was sexually assaulted, went to the hospital, did all the reports, and did all the procedures and all the tests that needed to prove that she was sexually assaulted and beaten. And the individual, I call him a criminal even though he hasn't been charged, said to her while he was abusing her, "If you speak out, I will go after your family." She decided to go to the hospital, report the crime, and while she was in there and everything was being followed through, he did. He went after her sister. So I guess I don't understand the law, so I apologize for my ignorance. When we have concrete evidence of a woman being assaulted and threatened at the same time, how is we, from this committee, protect those victims against those criminals? Okay, so someone who on your behalf can apply for a peace bond against anyone if you have reasonable grounds to fear that they cause harm or injury to you, your intimate partner or your child, or damage your your property, or share an intimate image or video of you without your consent. It doesn't have to be someone that you're in a relationship. It could be anyone. So how can we ensure that these, to me, they're criminals. I know they haven't been charged, but what more proof does that woman have to do to get her point across is my question. I don't know.
Official, you want to explain anything, or?
I would just say that if there was a situation where someone hypothetically had been assaulted and went to the police, typically charges would be laid at that point. The peace bond regime tends to be for situations where there hasn't been an offense yet, but there's sort of threatening conduct or coercive control issues that would lead a woman to think that she might be assaulted in the future, for example, or that her child might be harmed. So if there was proof of, proof could be in the sense of testimony from a victim that she had already been harmed, at that point charges would likely be laid, and the person would have to go to bail. There would be charges. They'd have to follow conditions if they're released on bail or get detained until a trial.
This particular young woman, this criminal, I call him a criminal, was released on bail. And he committed numerous crimes right after that, before anyone could get to him. Like, we're defeating the purpose here if we're not here to protect the women that are assaulted, because as we know, as all of us know, most of these assaults occur on women, on us. Anyway, just a...
If there's no further speaker, so can I call the question then? Okay. Shall G5 carry? Okay. So can we call the recorder?
Ms. Lambropoulos,
Yes.
Monsieur Serret,
Oui.
Ms. Hepner,
En faveur?
Ms. Vandenbeld,
Yes.
Ms. Vecchio,
Abstain.
Ms. Ferreri? No. Ms. Roberts?
No.
Madame Vian?
Non.
Madame Larouche?
Je vais m'abstenir.
Ms. Gazan?
So 5 yeas, 3 nays. So the motion carried. Yes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I know that, we are a very good committee and we agree and we operate by consensus. I noted also that by consensus, Ms. Vecchio did not vote, but I think that she abstained from voting, which I think sets a precedent. So I would just like to make a note that because we are normally chaired by a Conservative member in this committee, that means that if the chair is not actually physically present, which is the first time it's happened because of COVID, that would give the Conservatives 4 votes, which in every other committee is 3 votes. So I'm not asking for any remedy at the moment, but what I would like to do is just acknowledge that we're not setting a precedent by calling on Ms. Vecchio and having her abstain, that's not a precedent of having 4 votes for the Conservatives. I don't think it's going to happen again, so I'm not that concerned, but I just don't want it to be a precedent.
You want to say something? Your hand is up? Or is it legacy hand?
It's me. Thanks very much, Anita. I do really appreciate you bringing that up because I think, as everybody knows, being in the chair is probably one of the best joys I have working with everybody in this committee. But unfortunately, sometimes things are tied down, and I'm tied down to my riding right now. So thank you very much, Anita. And this is not precedence. This is just called working together. And we have agreed to abstain from these votes as the chair so that we maintain those numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And now next, NDP2. I'll ask if the member move it.
Sure, thank you so much. I'm wanting to amend that Bill S-205 in Clause 2 be amended by adding, after line 31 on page 2, the following. If the informant or defendant is Indigenous, the provincial court judge shall consider whether, instead of making an order under subsection 3 or 4, it would be more appropriate to recommend that the Indigenous support services, if any are available, be provided. And I think we have, and something that was long fought for, and in terms of in terms of recognizing the impacts of colonization, Gladue principles, and principles that were supported in the Ipoli case. And so I'm just merely ensuring that it's consistent with Canadian law. That's it.
So no further speakers. I see there's a nodded head. Yes. NDP2. Shall NDP2 carry? Yes. Okay. So NDP.
Can I just ask for a quick?
Go ahead, Michelle.
What is that word? Recess for 2 seconds. I just need to ask my colleagues something about this one. Is that suspend? Thank you. Jesus, I couldn't think of the word. Suspend.
Okay, I will suspend for minute.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Anna, go ahead.
Leah, maybe help me understand. Through the chair. Help me understand the support services that are offered. Is there anything that we could learn to maybe implement the benefit to all women, not just in Indigenous? Like, I'm really interested in knowing that because it sounds like you guys have a handle on it. Is there anything that we could learn from it?
Well, we kind of have a handle on it because we're overrepresented in the justice system. So like in all honesty, I think it's related to like culturally appropriate supports and also different alternative justice methods for healing based on the person who is like appearing before the courts. So, for example, if the person has attended residential schools, right, or has grown up in child welfare, that's why we look to Gladue principles and IPALI, especially in BC. They have a really solid supports using the Gladue principles. I think overall I think that's more of a question around so it is critical and I think, the justice system recognizes that acknowledging critical differences that have resulted from colonization is important. But I think it's what I've been saying about the overall justice system. We know, particularly with violent offenders, punishment doesn't deal with the violence. That, often therapeutic approaches, as we heard with the witnesses, are important. So that's why I have the amendment, just so you know. But, and it's a critical one, particularly, and I know, Michelle, you appreciate this, from our committee. We also have Bill C-15. And all legislation going forward has to be compatible. This is another example of that. So it's just keeping it consistent with Canadian law.
Dominic?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could our colleague explain a little bit more? That is, about the connection with the Gladue principle. Could you explain that a little bit? We might have some idea of that, but perhaps for other people listening, I think it would be important to make that connection, given that there's a basis there.
So given a certain case, the judge can apply Gladue principles in his. Yeah, it's good. So in certain cases, the judge can apply Gladue principles so that they'll look at alternative forms of justice. For example, if they know that the case is a result of certain behaviors that are clearly connected with colonial trauma. So, for example, going to a healing center instead of being incarcerated. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you go to residential school and you've spent 10 years in incarceration, and then you put somebody who's been incarcerated for most of their life, and you incarcerate them. When they leave jail, it's not going to change behavior, because it's about changing behavior and ending violence. Tough on crime approaches don't work with violence. And you have to look at each case and individual differently and take in historical considerations in the ruling, and that's why we have Gladue principles. In BC, they've done a really good job. They have a really robust program using Gladue principles, and there's high success, and we see less recidivism. So that's why I put the amendment forward. Okay.
C'était ma prochaine question.
That was going to be my next question. What are the benefits of applying Gladue principles? I don't know if you have anything else to add on that.
It's taking into consideration the historical circumstances that have resulted in a certain behavior, and addressing the historical circumstances that resulted in the behavior. In Manitoba, we have had many restorative justice programs, and the results are good. I mean, what they have found is. The results in terms of less recidivism are very good, even in terms of things like restorative justice circles. Yeah.
Anna?
Leah, can you explain something to me? So this would apply also to repeat offenders?
Pardon?
Would this also apply to repeat offenders?
So I think that's exactly why you apply Gladue principles, because you don't want to see repeat offending.
No, but I'm sorry.
So yeah, I mean, they would apply. I mean, as part of the consideration, they would apply Gladue principles. That doesn't mean it'll turn out the same way if you continue to offend, right? But I think yeah. I mean, they'll apply the principles. It doesn't mean the end result is going to be the same, right? In terms of the judgment. Yeah.
So if someone repeats,
and I think so. Just in all fairness, I think this is the clear answer. If you look at the justice system and the over-incarceration of Indigenous peoples, Indigenous and Black people, I don't think you have to worry about seeing Indigenous people put in jails, because one of the main criticisms of the justice system is the representation and the over-incarceration rates of Indigenous people. So that's actually, I mean, maybe we have Gladue principles, but we probably need more to deal with systemic racism in the justice system. So that's why I'm saying that. And I'm not saying it facetiously. It's this is real-time facts, right?
I will ask the members, please go through chair if they want to, any intervention. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just ask for do we have any stats on this program? Because I'd really be interested in that.
Okay, thank you. And you want to ask the official, or you want us?
Apologies. Stats on which program?
On the program that are being used right now with the Indigenous Do we have stats? I guess what I'm trying to get at is how can we incorporate something that works into a system that works for everyone? That's my question. And if we have stats, that would help clear up my answers, and it would help prove that, hey, maybe we need to shift our thinking.
Just so I'm clear, are we talking about statistics with respect to the GLADU sentencing provision in the criminal code, and how many offenders have been subject to that particular provision, and whether they have reoffended? Is that the question? Or?
Yeah, so statistics to prove that this program actually works for repeat offenders.
That the provision actually works. I don't have, I'd have to double check with the department to see what statistics they have on it, so I could undertake to get back to the committee.
That would be great, thank you.
Dominic, just to remind the members, if they want to pose the question, please raise their hands. Thank you.
Merci, merci Sonia.
Thank you, Sonia. Ms. Moore, could you remind us about the context of the GLADU decision? You are familiar with that, I'm sure.
Principle at sentencing, I believe.
D'où ça vient?
Where does that come from? Why does it help us orient ourselves?
It's a rule at sentencing that requires that the judge consider all available sanctions other than imprisonment, if they're reasonable in the circumstances and consistent with the harm done to victims and the community, should be considered for all offenders, with particular emphasis on Aboriginal offenders. So, for example, rather than imposing incarceration, judges can recommend restorative justice practices agreed to be followed by the offender based on their specific community beliefs. For example, community healing circles.
Madame la Présidente, ma question était davantage.
Madam Chairman, I really would like to know about the context. Was there an Indigenous person who was being sentenced? What was the decision?
Original case, so it originates from 1995. The woman's name was Jamie Tanis GLADU. She was a 19-year-old Cree woman who stabbed and killed her common-law husband at the time in Nanaimo, British Columbia. Miss GLADU was extremely intoxicated at the time of the stabbing, I guess double the legal limit. And had a dispute with her partner before the incident. She herself had been a victim of domestic abuse, so that was an important factor for the court. And the Supreme Court, I'm just going to the facts. So she was charged with second-degree murder, but ended up pleading guilty to manslaughter. And the judge at the time found that she would benefit significantly from treatment, substance abuse, and further counseling and treatment. And so it's quite long, the history, but that gives you some background to the actual case itself.
Thank you. If no more intervention, shall NDP 2 carry? All in favor? Oppose? Okay, carried. If member wants to move. G6. Lisa?
This, sorry, Chair, just let me get it. So what G6 would do is add a condition that would prohibit the defendant from going to a specified place or within a specified distance of that place. And it would remove the condition requiring the defendant to refrain from using social media. So I would like to actually go to the officials, if I could, Chair, to sort of explain why these two parts of this amendment would be preferable.
Official, please.
So just for context, proposed subsection 810.03 sub 7 of the bill lists a certain number of optional conditions that a judge can impose on the defendant in addition to any other reasonable condition. The radius condition that's being proposed here in this motion refers to paragraph C, the condition at paragraph C on page 3 of the bill, which currently reads that the defendant is to refrain from going to any specified place except in accordance with any specified conditions that the judge considers necessary. This motion would amend that paragraph to further prohibit the defendant from going within a specified distance of a place. The effect of the amendment would be to essentially allow the imposition of a radius around the intimate partner or child's home, within which the defendant would be prohibited from entering. For example, the condition could read that the defendant not attend within 500 meters of the victim's home. The idea is really to prevent the defendant from, let's say, sitting in their car outside of the victim's home while not being technically in breach, but sort of getting back to that coercive controlling behavior. So that is the rationale or the effect of the amendment with respect to paragraph C. Would you like me to also explain paragraph F?
Yes, please, because I believe we already have provisions in the criminal code that prevent a defendant from contacting a victim. So I'm wondering why we would need something extra in there, and if there would be. But I also know that social media can be used to stalk women, and so I want to be able to keep women as safe as possible. But I understand that social media is sort of a broad term, so I'd really like to understand the rationale behind that.
So you want to explain that?
This motion would also remove the condition to refrain from using social media under paragraph F. The criminal code is quite clear that any conditions imposed on someone in this peace bond context must be reasonable and linked to ensuring the good conduct of the defendant or the safety or informant of the intimate partner. So the courts have said there must be a very clear nexus between the condition that's being imposed and what you're trying to protect or prevent. A breach of a peace bond condition, as I mentioned earlier, could result in a new criminal offense for up to 4 years. So that's why it's very important to ensure that any condition imposed is not overly broad. The use of social media could be interpreted narrowly, or it could be interpreted very broadly by the courts to include things like job searches online or shopping for secondhand furniture. So while some specific uses of social media may in some cases be linked to a specific threat posed by the defendant, in many cases it might not be linked to any specific threat, and breaching that condition would still result in imprisonment of up to 4 years potentially. But the court could still impose, so the court has this sort of residual basket power to impose any reasonable condition that is necessary. The court could still craft a condition limiting social media use if that was relevant in that particular case, but removing it from this list would ensure that it's not routinely imposed in an overly broad way.
Thank you. Next speaker is Karen.
Hi, thanks so much. And Lisa, thanks so much for asking that question. I think that understanding the social media part is really important here. I think as parliamentarians, we all know it doesn't matter if it's a intimate partner violence or whatever it may be, but stalking is just, it's so apparent all of the time on social media. Is there anything, and I think this is one of my concerns, is that we do know that social media can be used as a tool when it comes to coercive control. We know that people make up fake accounts, all of these things. Is there anything in this bill that would protect a victim from social media abuse from their victim? Is there anything in here? I know you recommended, or you indicated that a judge could ask more or add more, but with it not being in here, perhaps if they missed it altogether. And I just want to hear more on that, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Anybody want to comment on that, officials?
I believe it was alluded to earlier. There is a condition under paragraph E currently in the bill, which would require the defendant to abstain from communicating directly or indirectly with the informant or intimate partner, and that word indirect is quite key here. So indirect communication could include things like liking a post on social media or commenting on social media. It could also include messages that a defendant might want to try to send through a third party. So any forms of communication, direct or indirect, that happen via social media would still be prohibited by this particular paragraph.
Michelle, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I think Karen touched on a lot of what I wanted to touch on. I just want to clarify, is the amendment removing the refrain from using social media? Is that correct? Through you, Madam Chair, to Lisa? Am I reading that amendment correct?
Yes. So because the term social media is extremely broad, and as the officials have explained, there are already laws and there's already provisions in this law that would prevent anyone from stalking anyone or reaching out to anyone through social media. So it would just allow people to, for example, do job searches. If they were under this condition, they'd still be able to do other things that may be necessary for their work, but not anything that would even indirectly contact the victim.
Okay, so...
Anna?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't done my question.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm reading here is to refrain from going to any specific place, or, can we change that or to and?
I just want to be clear. I think Michelle just is that social media is already included in terms of contact. It doesn't say social media, but it's already included in contact. So if they contact somebody through social media, that's still considered contact. So, and you had which specific paragraph was it?
Paragraph E, abstain from communicating directly or indirectly with the informant or the defendant or any relative or close friend of the informant.
Yeah, so that actually makes sense because there's still protections there around social media, but they might have conditions to their parole that they might have to use the internet, but that doesn't mean they can use the internet to contact the person. It doesn't open them up, so they cannot contact the person by Facebook. Is that right? I want to be clear that
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for this discussion. I guess what my question is how does this bill protect defendants who would use a fake account or do that? Like, what would be, and if contact is in there, which is the broad term to use social media, which I can get behind because it is so broad, right? You know, texting, you have all these different avenues of contacting the victim. I guess what is in place either through this bill or the justice system to follow up that when a victim, says this is happening, that you can actually find out. Does that make sense, what I'm asking? Through you, Madam Chair.
Officials, you want to answer that?
Sure. I believe you're asking about enforcement issues. So how could someone know, is this the defendant, that's creating this account? I think it really depends on the issue. Enforcement is really something that falls under provincial territorial jurisdiction, but I think if contact would include any form of contact, whether that's someone creating a fake profile and contacting the person or contacting them through someone else that they know, that's still considered contact. It's quite a broad term. It has been interpreted quite broadly by the courts, and it includes that word indirect as well. If a woman feels that this person is contacting her in any way, the normal procedure is she would have to contact the Crown Attorney right away to let them know of the potential breach of the provision. And like I said, if there is a breach, new charges will be laid for a breach of the condition, and then the person could be liable for up to 4 years on indictment.
Thank you. Dominic?
Moi, je le laisserai, Madame.
Well, Madam Chair, I understand all of these explanations, and it makes a lot of sense. But a judge has judgment and can use common sense and will be able to discern and look at situations where really it may be necessary to prevent the person from using social media at all. It's hard to predict, but we can think of all sorts of situations, the whole range. And there might be some where using social media is out of the question. So just out of a sense of precaution, perhaps we could leave this, and obviously a judge won't use it if it needs to be used by a defendant or the person who's looking for a job and so on. But on another point, Madam Chair, we're changing lines, these lines. Does that change all of the line numbering after that? So C and D and so on. Yes? Does that change? Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and then Andrew.
Oh, I didn't have my hand up.
Okay, Andrew.
Thanks.
Madam
Did I have my
Larouche.
hand up?
Well, the question of the specified distance is important, but I want to come back to the social media aspect and withdrawing that. The wording on page 3 gives the judge the possibility at the beginning of 7 to impose any reasonable conditions if it's relevant. So is that the issue here? Because I think I've heard the opposite. Does the judge have that discretion? Yes. The judge can impose any reasonable conditions to the recognizance that the judge considers desirable to ensure the good conduct of the defendant. So the amendment does not remove that wording at the top. So if we leave the wording, it doesn't impose anything about social media. Is that correct? Yes.
Will I call for questions? Okay, all in favor? Oppose? Okay. Shall G6 is carried. Okay, G7. If member move it, in order to be coherent throughout this bill, member should keep in mind the decision made on amendment G3 while considering amendment G7, since they are related. So, Lisa?
Thank you, Chair. So G7 is really a technical amendment, and it just makes this document more consistent. So it replaces the word informant with intimate partner and or parties in subsections 2, 7, 9, and 13. So quite simple. I'm not sure if anybody needs more clarification from the analysts.
Any intervention on G7? All in favor? Okay, G7 carried. Shall clause 2 carry? As amended. Carried. Clause 3? You have a... So... Okay, Michelle, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do really want to thank everybody today. I think this has actually been more productive than I expected. There is definitely a concern that this 205 was put forward, that it doesn't put victims' rights in the driver's seat, and I know we have to work together to ensure that it's not amended to the point that it doesn't compromise victims. But that being said, I think there's a few more amendments that our team wants to spend some time on diving sort of deeper into and discussing, because I know we have until April to get this bill back to the House to ensure that it passes. For Senator Boisseneau, I always struggle saying his name properly with my lack of French accent. Boisseneau. But in the interim, what we've just come back from is a time in our constituencies, time to go home, time to listen, time to meet with people on the ground. And because we're status of women, and I know you all care, I want to move a motion on the
Point of
floor.
order. I thought this was a question. I'd really like to get the, I thought you had a question. I thought we were in the middle of this, and I'd really like to get through this legislation. So like Leah said, we can get it done and get it through and get onto the red dress alert. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
We are for sure on the same page. I just have the floor to move a motion that I think is really critical right now, Madam Chair.
I was thinking you asked the question to analyst because that's what Ty said. Any question on that? You said I have a question. That's why it was on point of order. Yeah.
I do have a question to move a motion.
That's not the same thing.
Anita?
Let her continue. I'm putting my hand up.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Thank you. So before I got here, obviously what I had during my time in the riding is obviously the affordability issue was the number one thing that came across my emails and phone calls and messages, and in particular single moms. And this morning before I came here, I had a phone call from my office, and I'm going to use her name as Jane because she's fearful to speak out, which is another major problem.
Point of order. I don't know how this is relevant. Chair, I really don't want to waste time. I think this committee can get a lot of really good work done, and I'd really like to stay on topic, please.
I think this is on topic to the motion that I'm moving. I think it's.
She has the floor.
Thank
so
you.
go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's. I think this is critical. So she phoned me, and she makes $62,500. She has two kids. She has a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. And she said, Michelle, for the first time in my life, I have bill collectors calling me. Like, this is a genuine person.
I just want clarification that I'm on the list to speak on this afterwards.
Yes,
Okay.
you're the next.
Okay, thank you.
And so she phoned me. I think she's watching. She said, I'm going to try to watch this because she said, I really appreciate you. She said, I really can't speak up. And I think that's what I've heard repeatedly is people feel afraid to share their truth, share their experience. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame of not being able to pay your bills. And it actually ties in with when we talk about domestic violence and we talk about this epidemic because, and in particular single moms, because it increases the divorce rate because people are so stressed, it puts marital stress on, and then you have more single parents. So I think as status of women, what we are asking for today is to move a motion and ask for the support in studying this motion because I think we could do some incredible work around this. And it's really just a matter of searching any media site every single day. You know, I have a whole list of people here. Single mom carpenter earning $54,000 near Hamilton looks to pay off her credit card debt. The rising cost of living means this mom of 3 goes hungry so her kids can eat. These are all women disproportionately impacted by the cost of living crisis and inflation. The Canadian housing market has just had its worst year since 2000. This one says Trudeau cranks up spending, but Canadians are worse off. Higher interest rates are punishing low-income Canadians, data shows. The sad part is that this woman that I spoke to, Jane, she's not even a low-income person. I think that's what's really sad. And the small entrepreneur women business owners, in particular daycare operators who are having to claim insolvency and bankruptcy because they can't operate their childcare. This is disproportionately impacting women, and we are the status of women. So I will read my motion into the record, and I hope I can get full support to study this motion. Due to the escalating cost of living, especially in housing, food prices, home heating, and gas, the committee undertake a study to investigate the financial challenges faced by single-income parents, including single mothers, with a view of making recommendations to the government that will make life more affordable for them. The study take up no less than 6 meetings and invite the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, the Minister of Women and Gender Equality, and the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities to appear for 1 hour each, and that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House. And I just can't stress enough, all of these issues that we are discussing, the undercurrent of all of it is affordability. Like, when you can't afford to eat and you're a single mom, you're a woman, or you're trying to care for your children, so many of these issues that we cover in this committee, domestic violence, human trafficking, mental health, period poverty, all of it comes down to the cost of living. If you can't afford to pay your bills and you're starting to lean on credit, this has catastrophic impacts on our country and our women. Our women are the backbone of everything. We know that. They run the house. They run the household budgets. And when I was talking to Jane on the phone before I got here, she said, Michelle, I make $62,000 and I can't feed my kids. It's wild. It's actually wild. And she said, pardon my French, I work my ass off. I can do this. So I would ask for a vote to pass this motion. I believe my colleagues all know the importance of this and affordability and the impact of inflation. And we get the ministers in here and we come up with some incredible solutions to help make life more affordable for everyone, and in particular because this is the Status of Women Committee, women and single mothers. Thank you.
Anita, you are the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As is the common practice in this committee, I would like to move to adjourn debate and refer the matter to the Subcommittee of Agenda and Procedure.
It is a dilatory motion, non-debatable. Yeah. And now we need to proceed to vote on it. Yeah, I'll call the question.
The motion is to adjourn debate. Ms. Lambropoulos? Mr. Serret?
Oui.
Ms. Hefter?
Oui.
Ms. Vandenbelt?
Yes.
Ms. Vecchio?
Abstain.
Ms. Ferreri?
No.
Ms. Roberts?
No.
Ms. Via?
No.
Madame Larouche?
No.
Ms. Gazan?
Yes.
So 5 yea, 4 nay, debate adjourned.
Same point of order as before, just note it for the record, about the voting of Ms. Vecchio.
But point of order, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask, through you, Madam Chair, to the clerk, I thought Karen, our former chair, was not voting, so by calling her name out and abstaining, then it is voting. So I don't understand why she has to be acknowledged. So I just want to clarify that point. I don't know all the rules, so why she has to be acknowledged and then she abstains. So just to clarify, that's all.
Madam
Marky
Clerk,
Mark
you
doesn't
want
love
to
me anymore.
Explain
No, it
that.
has nothing to do with Karen. No, please. It's a clarification of the rules.
You want to explain that?
Okay, yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. I understand the question, and the reason is that she's a regular member because the vice chair has assumed the chair for today, and it's her choice to abstain. But for me to remove her from the list would be not in my purview.
Go to Madame Larouche. I just want to say that this motion was referred to the subcommittee, and we'll proceed as to 5. And Andren, you want to say something? Madame Larouche, you want to speak?
I'm trying to understand things properly because I know that Ms. Vecchio is participating today as a member, not as chair, but generally as chair, she doesn't have the right to vote. But now, today, she is a member of the committee and participating as such. Generally, she doesn't get to vote when she's chair.
Anita?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems that there's inconsistency between committees. There are several committees where government chairs were online and did not vote and did not get called out to vote. So I think this is something that would need to be referred to the head clerk and with the whips. And pending that, I just wanted to make sure that we're noting our objection to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Objection noted. And now we are proceeding to clause 3, G8. Ask the member want to move it. Before you move it, I just want to, in order to be coherent throughout the bill, members should keep in mind the decision made on amendment G6 while considering amendment G8, since it seeks to renumber subparagraphs that are impacted by G6. So G8, I will ask member to move.
Madame la
Yes,
Présidente,
Dominique?
oui, un point.
Madam Chair, I have a point of order. The interpreter is not speaking very loud, and I have to put my volume up quite high. So I don't know whether there is something to be done by the interpreter, or speak a little bit more loudly or something. Andréane agrees that the sound from the interpretation, the volume is quite low. Thank you.
We'll make sure the interpreter will address this question.
C'est mieux.
Did we fix this matter? Everything is okay now? Okay, thank you. So, Lisa?
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a lot to say about G8. I believe it's just a consequential amendment of G6, which already passed. It just changes some numbers to make the bill comprehensive and cohesive. I don't know if there's anything further to add.
I didn't see any intervention, so shall G8 carry? Carried. Shall clause 3 carry? As amended. As amended. Okay. Everyone in favor, so it carried.
Non. On est revenu donc sur
So now we are we on G8? Could I just ask a question about this?
Now clause 3 carried as amended.
J'avais une question, Madame la Présidente.
I had a question about G8. I just would like to ask the officials if this. I'd just like to know a little bit more about the effect of the amendment.
We already carried and everyone in favor, so I'll ask the members if they give the permission to go back, because now we are on class 3.
It's just a numbering issue. It's just changing numbers in the thing. It doesn't really say anything consequential. I just don't want to waste too much time so we can get through this.
So, and
Okay, I'm sorry. It just went quite quickly. I just want to understand from the officials if this is just a technicality. So that was, I just wanted to hear from the officials that that was the case, and just so that I understand correctly. Thanks. So the reason for the motion is that the part about the social media was removed because we adopted that amendment. So H becomes G, I becomes H, and so on. So then this change has to be made as a result, just changing all these numbers.
Parce que vous avez présumé que
Okay. Because there's an assumption then that it was adopted. No, if that amendment hadn't been passed, then this would not be in effect.
So, Madam Larouche, are you clear now? Okay. So shall clause 3 carried? As amended, it's carried. Now we are on clause 6, G9. I'll ask the member if they want to move it. Okay, Lisa.
G9, right?
We didn't do clause 4 and clause 5. We just ask if clause 4 carries. Point of order?
There's no amendments on.
So if there's no amendments, don't we still need to say shall clause 4 carry and carry it?
So G9, in order to be...
No, Madam Chair?
So on your point of order, Anita, we already adopted class 4, class 5, class on December 4th.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
So now we are on G9. In order to be coherent throughout the bill, members should keep in mind the decision made on Amendment G3 while considering Amendment G9 since they are related. Now we are going on G9. Lisa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, this is another technical amendment that ensures the wording matches some of the amendments that we've already agreed to. So it relates to Form 32, and this is used by a judge to indicate which conditions that a defendant would have to comply with once they are bound under a recognizance. And this motion proposes to amend Clause 6 of the bill so that it would modify the form in a way that it ensures consistency between Form 32 and the language in the new paragraph that we have passed here at this committee. It requires the Attorney General to consent before a condition of wearing an electronic monitoring device can be imposed. I'm not sure if we can turn to the officials for any further insight into why this is necessary.
So officials, you want to explain on that, or everything is okay? Everyone is clear?
If people have questions, we can answer, but basically, as was said, it's to make the form match the provision that was adopted previously at a previous meeting, just so that there's consistency from one place to the next.
Okay. So who's first? Sorry, Dominic, you or Anna? Dominic, go ahead.
Anna voulait seulement m'aider.
Anna was just helping me identify exactly where we were. If possible, and this could be a very quick answer from our officials, G9 is connected with G3. But G3 was a page and a half long. So just to remind us, we haven't talked about this for a few weeks, could you just review what G3 was about? What did that, we've got the Attorney General here. Perhaps you could just bring us up to speed here.
La page 3.
If we look at page 3 of the bill, we have D, which says to wear an electronic monitoring device with the consent of the Attorney General. That part was not in the clause on page 7 concerning the forms. It just says to wear an electronic monitoring device. It doesn't say, so we want to add with the consent of the Attorney General. So G3 was already there. So G3 did not change that clause. So G9, we're told, is very related to G3, and G3 is almost 2 pages long. It's been a few weeks, so I just wonder if you could just give us a little bit of an update on what that was about.
I think we already adopted G3 on December 4th.
Comprenez-vous?
Yes.
So now we are talking about G9.
Non, non, je sais ça.
I know that.
Je sais ça. Allez-y.
Please go ahead.
G9 is consequential to G3. The reason for G9 is that I believe this additional wording, if the Attorney General has consented to this condition, was actually added in the Senate. So the original bill didn't have that wording, and when they added this wording in the Senate to this particular provision, they forgot to add it to the form as well. So this is simply just correcting this oversight from an amendment that was done in the Senate earlier.
Dominic, if it's clear.
Oui, Madame la Présidente, je veux juste...
Madam Chair, I just want to be clear on this. I certainly aren't objecting to our having passed Amendment G3, but we were just told that we had to read G9 in light of G3. Does that make sense? So G9 is related to G3. Don't we have to look at the two together? Okay, very well, thank you.
So no more intervention, or everything is clear on G9? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So shall G9 carry? Yes. Okay, all in favor, oppose? G9 carried. Now we are heading to G10, which is already moved. Now we are resuming debate on that. So in order to be coherent throughout the bill, members should keep in mind the decision made on Amendment G3 while considering Amendment G10, since they are related.
C'est ce que j'ai dit, Sonia. Tantôt, vous avez...
That's what I was saying, Sonia. You referred to G9, or when you talked about G9, you said you had to keep in mind G3. And it's the same thing here. So I just would like to understand again, be reminded of what G3 was about.
So because this is my notes, I will ask Claire to explain that, to be clear on that. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Pour répondre à...
To answer Ms. Vienne's questions, there was a connection procedurally between the two, because in your amendments, we had a substitution. I'm sorry, let me go back. So there was a replacement of lines. Any judge of the provincial court judge can ask the Attorney General on behalf of the complainant, and it continues. And that's where the procedural reference came from, and that was referred to by the chair, the connection between the two.
No more intervention, and yeah, Anna?
This is just a technical question. Are we on section B, replacing line 37? It says that the judge consider necessary section to 810.3, or is that 801.3? Is that a transposition?
You want to give that? Anna, if the official can, explain that, thank you. You want to impose the question to officials?
Yeah, so where it's, okay, so if we look at line 37, that the judge consider necessary section 801.3, should that be 810.3? Is that a transposition? It looks like it might be a transposition. I could be wrong, but I'm just wondering if you could clear that up.
officials. Go ahead.
So if we're looking at line 37, so it's just clarifying that it's for that specific, it's 810 point, sorry, your question is the 810.03, is that right? Is what the question is?
Well, is it 801.3
It's
or
810.
810?
It's a correction.
So it is, that is a transposition. It's corrected to 810, correct?
So G10, it should be 810, yes, because
Okay.
810.3 outlines the rules for taking a sample of a bodily substance.
Right, so it's not 801.3.
No, I
That was
think that
just
was
a
a typo.
transposition? That was my question. Thank you.
Sorry about that, yeah.
That's okay.
Okay, if all cleared, can we call the question? Shall G10 carried? So all in favor, opposed? No opposed, so G10 carried. Now we are coming on G11. I'll ask the member want to move it. G11. Okay, Lisa, go ahead.
Once again, Chair, this is a consequential amendment of a previous amendment that we passed, G6. So I'll ask members to refer to the officials if they have any further questions, but really it just standardizes our language.
If no more questions, G11. Sure.
Is this the refrain from going to any specified place, the F1?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anna.
Can we, like, okay, so refrain from going to any specific place or being within a specific distance, should or not be and?
Officials, you want to answer that?
So this is it's a technical drafting question. My understanding is that the or is interpreted as and as well. So if you say going to a place or within a specified distance, the defendant would have to comply with both of those things. Does that make sense?
Not really, but,
So of versus or is what you're asking, Anna?
no, it should,
It's a
and
technical.
should it be and instead of or? But she says it applies to both.
Refrain from going to any specified place or being, I like when you read it. That's what I like, when I know where you are, when you read it.
No more questions, so shall T12 is carried? Everyone is in favor? Okay. Oh, sorry, 11 carried. No opposing, and then G11 is carried.
Sorry, just a quick question. Why? Okay, sorry. It's okay. Sorry.
Okay. Shall Class 6 carry as amended? Okay. No. Okay, I see the nodded. No more opposing. Everyone is in favor. So Class 6 carried as amended. Now we are coming to Class 7, G12. I'll ask the member if they want to move it. Lisa?
Thank you. Another consequential amendment of G6, and for my colleague Ms. Ferrari, I'll read it out. That Bill S205 in Clause 7 be amended by replacing line 13 on page 8 with the following 810.04, 810.03, 810.01, 810.01, and there's more numbers in there I won't get to, but that's basically it.
For a brief suspension with my team for a second.
Yes, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
on, do that on G. Do that on G12. G12, okay.
Can I just have the analysts, through you, Madam Chair, explain what this would do to the bill?
So officials, can you answer Michelle's question?
So G12 just renumbers a reference in the bill into Form 51. So that's a form that is served on someone who's required to provide a sample of a bodily substance. And so it's just a renumbering. An I becomes an H, and this is due to G6, which deleted the social media condition. Does that help?
It does help, thank you, and thank you for your patience with this as I slowly go through lawyer school while being a member of Parliament. It's obviously, you can imagine the consequences of the decisions we're making. So it's because the one previous clause had been altered, you have to therefore change the number because that had been removed. Is this correct?
Yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, so when you delete a paragraph or a subparagraph, then that affects the other subparagraphs after. So if you get rid of, I believe it was an F, then G becomes F, I becomes H, for example. So in this situation, I becomes H.
Mm-hmm. So for folks watching at home, you can imagine how sort of muddled and confusing this might be. I guess the bottom line question for folks watching is, what is the consequence or implication of this on the bill itself? When we look at, so the bill that we're studying is to protect victims, in particular of domestic violence. What does this do?
Officials, you want to chime on that to answer?
It provides consistency across the criminal code.
Thank you. Just for the record, thanks.
No more intervention. Can we call for question? So, shall G12 carry? All in favor? Opposed? No. G12 carried. Shall Clause 7 carry as amended? Yes. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? So, Clause 7 carry as amended. G13. I'll ask if member wants to move. Lisa?
Once again, another consequential amendment, this one of G3, so it just, once again, is a measure for consistency and has to be moved because we moved G3.
Thank you. Again, I guess I would put this back to our analysts here. What did I guess the question then becomes, what did G3 change about the bill? That is, I guess, the question, because if this is just reinforcing G3 through, consistency, what did G3 do to the bill?
I'll ask the answer. Officials, if you can answer that.
Sure. So the part of G3 that is being reflected here is just the change that was made to allow another person bring a peace bond on the intimate partner's behalf. So there's some updating to this provision, which is a transitional provision, to reflect that change that was made in G3.
So can you clarify what another person means?
Yes. So it would allow, for example, a police officer to bring the peace bond on behalf of the intimate partner. Or it could be a support person, an intimate partner's sister, or someone that's close to the intimate partner that brings the peace bond on her behalf.
So how do you prevent somebody who may have bad intentions or is also maybe doing coercive control to the victim from bringing forth the peace bond?
So the peace bond, the judge needs to assess the peace bond, so we'll bring in all the parties to the courtroom to assess whether or not they're going to order the peace bond, and they look at whether there's a reasonable fear and whether that reasonable fear is sort of objective from the perspective of a third person, of another person. So it's not just based on the subjective fear of the person. if someone comes in and says, I fear this person because they've been threatening me, the judge will need to assess whether it's objectively verifiable. So that sort of acts as a check on the process to ensure that the peace bond's being ordered for the right reasons.
What in other legislation would something like this have been, when in other legislation would something like this have been used?
Point of
this
order.
language?
Relevance, just because we already passed G3, we already passed this language, we already discussed it, and so I think we're just spinning our
That's
wheels.
a point of order. I think it's just
I think it's
clarification.
relevance. It's point of order on relevance? Yeah.
Raising this, and officials, thank you. And I see Karen is waiting from long time.
Oh, sorry,
yeah.
Karen.
So go
Not
ahead,
a
Karen.
problem. Sorry about that. I know we're getting right to the end. And Lisa, thanks for that intervention. But at the same time, there is one thing. Maybe I've just read too many James Patterson novels or something. But when it states fears on unreasonable grounds that another person, and that's why I want to get into this, and maybe looking at the time, we may have to talk about this on Thursday, but another person, could that mean, like, I don't know, maybe I've hired to kill somebody? And that's some of my thoughts when it's got this, because we were doing intimate partner, because we were looking at that relationship of intimate partner. But another person specifically in this clause, I recognize that we need things close, but the way I'm reading it seems extraordinarily broad, because that other person may not be the intimate partner. And so perhaps you can give me clarification on that. Like I said, it's kind of cherry picking, and as you know, everybody cherry picks, and I'm just looking, if we look at something like this, could there be any issues with another person when we're talking about intimate partners specifically?
Officials, please, you want to answer Karen's question?
So I believe the provision would read that an information has been laid under subsection 810 before the day on which this act comes into force by a person who fears on reasonable grounds that another person will commit an offense that will cause personal injury. So the other person is really referring to anyone who they fear could be subject to the peace bond, which is consistent with how all the other peace bonds in the criminal code are currently drafted.
Thank you. If there's no, yes.
Just recognizing the clock, that it's past 1 o'clock, so I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, so in favor of that, okay, meeting adjourned.